Hi guys, this is JSON.com and I'm here with a review of the Apple iPhone 16 Pro Max. I've been spending with it the better part of 2 weeks and now it's time for a verdict. The phone is priced at around $1,200 and some of its novelties include a new camera button, which you can press here, and I have finally figured out how to change the options of the camera button. It also includes a brand new 48 megapixel ultra-wide camera. It started selling on September 20, and before this model, which is by the way my new daily driver, I had an iPhone 15 Pro, which had overheating and a poor battery, so I decided to skip to this model. It has 4K 120 frames per second and AI capability, which in Europe hasn't come yet and USA should come soon enough. Now, aside from that, I would say things are pretty much the same, except for, of course, a brand new processor and a slightly bigger battery. Forgot that the screen has also become larger, 6.9 inches now, instead of the 6.7 inches like the predecessor had. So let's get straight to it. First of all, we talk about the design. We have a glass front and we have a glass back. It's protected by Corning glass technology and a ceramic shield up front. Now, the bezels that we got here are narrower compared to the previous version. And I should also mention that there's a titanium frame. It's titanium grade 5, once again like the predecessor. We have IP68 certification, which means the phone can be sunk up to 6 meters in depth for 30 minutes. The colors include black titanium, white titanium, natural titanium, and desert titanium. We also have sapphire glass on the capacitive button here for the camera, but in a very small quantity. Okay, so that's pretty much it. And now as far as the measurements are concerned, the length is 163 millimeters, the width is 77.6, and the thickness 8.3 millimeters. The predecessor was shorter, was less wide, and had the same thickness. The weight has increased. This one weighs 227 grams. The predecessor was 221 grams. Obviously, it's got a solid build, but feels a bit too big for my hand. I have a rather small hand compared to the phone here. I can only reach, I would say, 2/3 of it. The top part, it's, well, harder to reach. I also bought a case for it. On purple, haven't seen this hue a lot, reminds me of the car that the Penguin is driving in the HBO Max series. Okay, so we're done with the design. I would say that even though it's so well built and comfy and ergonomic and all that, the titanium smudges too easily for my liking, which is something that also happened with the predecessor. Now, I think it's time to address the screen and also talk about the screen. So the panel you're seeing here is a 6.9 incher. It's got all the bells and whistles as usual from Apple. I'm talking about LTPO Super Retina display, XDR OLED, 120 Hz refresh rate. It also has HDR10, Dolby Vision up to 2000 nits of brightness, and 91.4% screen to body ratio. The actual resolution is, well, it's actually 2868 over 1320 pixels, and that's how the image looks like here. It's got always on display, which the non-Pro models don't have, so the iPhone 16 and 16 Plus don't have always on display. Narrow bezels and a bright and crisp experience. Now, as you can see, the color palette is very wide. We have wide view angles as well, and excellent contrast even in the full sunlight. Let me just zoom in for you so you can see the effect of the dynamic island here. Yeah, I know it's still a bit of a bummer, but you're actually going to forget about it faster than you would expect. Okay, so satisfying screen color-wise, brightness-wise, contrast-wise, and view angle-wise. You can see here the minimized waveform of what's happening here and quickly swap between apps. I think I'm going to pause it and see how we did in the brightness test. Okay, so when it comes to the brightness, we were able to achieve 963 lux units. What this means, well, it's great, but it's no record. It's above the iPhone 15 Pro, which was able to achieve 953. It's above the Vivo X90 Pro and the Xiaomi 13 Ultra. It's below the Huawei Pura 70 Ultra, below the Xiaomi 14, below OnePlus 12 and the Galaxy S24 Plus. We do not have as many settings for the screen as we saw on other handsets out there. On other handsets, you can tweak the colors, color palette, all sorts of options. Here we have light and dark, automatic, text size, bold text, true tone, night shift, auto lock, raise to wake, always on display with its associated options, widgets, wallpaper and all that. Plus display zoom. And there's an interesting thing. If you really want to activate auto brightness, you have to go to accessibility and all the way here let's see, display and text size at the bottom, auto brightness, to actually reduce your battery consumption. A pretty satisfying screen, and now we have to go inside the phone. We're going to encounter the brand new Apple A18 Pro processor. This one is a 3nm hexa-core chip with a 6-core GPU. It's supposed to be up to something like 15%, 20% better performance than the Apple A17 Pro before. It's got ray tracing and a 16-core NPU, which should provide you with 35 trillion operations per second. You're getting 8 gigs of RAM and 256 gigabytes of storage for my version. There's also versions with 512 or 1 terabyte NVMe storage. Now the performance here was great when it comes to throttling. So we did a throttle test, and the application here is called, just so you know, it's called Appsy. It costs something like $1. You just start it up, it starts throttling the device, and you can also select how long you want the throttle to last. So the throttling test resulted in only the loss of 12% performance, which is actually not that bad. To be honest, I've seen worse. The Galaxy S24 Ultra loses 36%, the OnePlus 12 27%, and now let's see other tests. Now in Antutu 10, we are on the 10th spot, just above the iPhone 15 Pro and the Xiaomi 13 Ultra. The score is rather modest, 1.5 million, almost 1.6, while other phones are cracking the 2 million barrier, including the recently tested Xiaomi 14T Pro. Now, the story changes in Geekbench. 6, you can see here, 3rd spot in the single core, 4th spot in the multi-core. We got beaten only by the iPhone 16 and 16 Plus the Xiaomi 14T Pro and its MediaTek. The MediaTek is becoming stronger and trendier these days. In 3D Mark, 8th spot above the Galaxy S24, the Solar Bay beating the Xiaomi 14, and this one, Wildlife Unlimited, 5th spot above the iPhone 16 and 16 Plus, but beaten by a few other phones like the OnePlus 12 and Honor Magic 6 Pro. It's less dominant than before, that's what I would say. There's also no overheating compared to the iPhone 15 Pro, which I had last year and overheated from the start. Now, as far as the battery is concerned, we have here a 4685 mAh unit, while the predecessor had a 4441 mAh unit, so it's an increase of around 200 mAh or something. We don't have the exact wired charging wattage. We're supposed to get 50% in 30 minutes. We do have the fact that it supports 25 watt wireless MagSafe charging, 15 watt QI charging, and 4.5 watts, believe it or not, wired charging reverse. So if you plug in another phone, it will charge from it as if it were a power bank. We don't have a bundle charger, you probably know that. Now when it comes to the video playback time, we did our tests and measurements, and here we are. So quite impressive, 28 hours and 21 minutes of continuous HD video playback. It's superior to the Samsung Galaxy S24 Plus, S24 Ultra, and Huawei Pura 70 Ultra. However, there are 7 other phones above it, including the very impressive iPhone 16 Plus and its 31 plus hours, plus the Honor Magic 6 Pro, which goes to a crazy almost 32 hours. Still, it's pretty good. Now, when it comes to continuous usage, I would say that you're able to get 1.5 days of usage if you're a medium user. If you're like me, constantly uploading to Dropbox, Instagram, taking videos and photos, hundreds of them a day, you may require a charge once you go to bed. And maybe even last longer than that, so you can get about 18% the next day when you wake up if you forgot to charge it. Speaking of charging, I'm a bit disappointed here. I used a 30 watt charger and achieved the charge in 1 hour and 54 minutes. So yeah, definitely long. But at least after 30 minutes, I actually surpassed the Apple prediction and achieved the 54% charge level after just 30 minutes of charge. So at least that's fine. There are also other low power mode savings and also the option to charge the phone up to 80% to properly make it last. Now, I think I'm going to eliminate the true tone and the dark mode stays on, so you can get a proper white hue here once we're filming. Now, I think it's time to discuss the acoustics. We have stereo speakers, one at the bottom and the other one is the earpiece hidden here. We also have a personalization of the spatial audio. It's actually interesting because it requires you to capture your head, believe it or not. So I have to spin my head and show my ears to do personalized spatial audio. And the experience goes something like this. Okay, so more volume, I'd say, than the Galaxy S24 series. It's very loud. If you're listening to metal songs or guitar heavy songs, there will be some distortion for you. I would say use about 70% to get rid of distortion. Even though when I listened to this sample, I felt plenty of bass. Some other bassy songs did not deliver as much. I'm talking about dubstep, rap songs, Kendrick Lamar, and so forth. Voices are okay, high notes are okay, but I wanted even more bass, if you can believe it. Now we also have some measurements here with the decibels and all that. So we achieved 78.6 decibels at the top of the phone and 83.2 decibels at the bottom. So it's clear that the bottom speaker is doing the heavy lifting. With this value, we surpass OnePlus 12, iPhone 15 Pro, S24 Ultra, and we are below Motorola Edge 50 Ultra, the Galaxy S24 Plus. In gaming, 96.5 decibels, expected more here. It's superior to the iPhone 15 Pro and OnePlus 12, but inferior to Galaxy S24 Ultra and Honor Magic 6 Pro. In general, I'm happy with the iPhone speakers, but nowadays people are using headphones anyway. And by the way, the personalized spatial audio thing applies to AirPods and Beats only. Now, as far as the camera is concerned, the front setup has stayed the same, 12 megapixel and a special SL 3D sensor for your bokeh and Face ID needs, f1.9 aperture, optical image stabilization, autofocus, HDR, Dolby Vision, 3D spatial audio and 4K 60 frames per second. That's only the front camera. At the back side, there's a novelty. Instead of a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera, we have a 48 megapixel ultra wide camera, but let's take it one at a time. So the main sensor is a 48 megapixel shooter with f1.8 aperture and sensor shift OIS. New generation. We have dual pixel face detection autofocus. Then you also have a periscope camera, 12 megapixel telephoto f2.8 with dual pixel face detection autofocus and a special 3D sensor shift OIS. So we have sensor shift on two cameras, tele and main. Of course, 5x optical zoom here and 25x digital zoom. The 48 megapixel newcomer is a ultra wide one. We have f2.2 aperture, face detection autofocus for macro, and finally the time of flight 3D LiDAR sensor here. Dual LED dual tone flash, 4K 60 frames per second and also 120 frames per second this time, 10-bit HDR, Dolby Vision HDR, ProRes capture, 3D spatial video and audio capture, stereo sound recording, so a lot of things happening here. Now, as far as the UI is concerned, let's get you through it. So I'm going to use this cute little cat, go to the camera, and let's analyze all of them. First of all, we have an expanded color profile here, so not live, but this one. These are supposed to be undertones and moods. The undertones include standard, amber, gold, rose gold, neutral, cool rose, and they can be tweaked here as far as tone goes, color palette, so you can actually change them from here or reset them. Once you're done with the undertones, and let me just get back to the regular option for exposure. Okay, now once you're done with the undertones, you can go to moods, which can be set to vibrant, natural, luminous, dramatic, quiet, cozy, ethereal, muted black and white, and stark black and white. I prefer to keep it standard, but some situations require definitely a lot of black and white. Natural is also good, and standard is definitely the core one. Okay, now aside from that, we have here panorama. We have the spatial capture, which is special for the Apple Vision Pro. It can be photo or video. We have a portrait with its obvious settings, which you know from the previous years, and the option to tweak your bokeh. This is the photo capture, and this is the power of the zoom, 5x, just as good as the other phones. Here you can also, by the way, change. You can see other focal lengths, 35, 24, 28 millimeter. This is the video capture. Once again, you can go now up to 120 frames per second in 4K, which is definitely an upgrade. There's cinematic, which can also let you do some bokeh magic. Slow motion. And forgot to show you that in the video department, there's also the action mode, sort of like a GoPro wannabe. Finally, slow motion and time-lapse. And I think I've covered all of them. Let's see if I missed anything. Okay, so I almost forgot about the camera button. It's here. So you can press it once to activate the camera app. You can press it once again to take a photo. You can keep it pressed to record video. And there are more tasks. So if you press it like this, gently, you can trigger some changes here for the tone, for example. But you can also press it to choose your option. So if you want to press the zoom is probably everyone's favorite option here. So you can select the zoom and do this. It's comfy when you're using it in landscape, but a bit strange when you're doing this in portrait. So yeah, feels more like a landscape affair and takes a bit getting used to. I actually had a hard time finding out how to swap its roles except by pressing here, and that took me a while and didn't find any tutorial for it. So yeah, I'm pretty happy I finally found it. Now let's talk about the pictures and videos I've taken with this handset, including a techno night and some very good food. So first things first, this one here, the main camera particularly, captures a lot of light, and it's a bit more tempered when it comes to the ultra wide one. So this is a regular shot, this is the ultra wide shot. Everything is great so far, but you're going to notice something. When we're capturing vegetation, especially in the background, the details of the leaves aren't as impressive and there's a bit of overexposure when it comes to the vegetation once again. I tested the zoom, this is the actual regular distance, and I wanted to see what's on the sign here, and at 5x I was actually impressed by the details, but things were as impressive when we kept it to 10x. This is 10x without a 10x optical zoom, and the camera is doing quite fine. It's not a surprise, the predecessor was also quite adept at this. This is actually 20x and things are still pretty impressive. Okay, so it's selfie time. I would say it's on par with the greatest phones out there, less processing than the Huawei Pura 70 series or the Pixels, which tend to over-sharpen and mess around with the details of the beard. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with the selfie capture here, but I was happy with the selfie capture on the previous 2 or 3 iPhones, so I wouldn't say that things have changed. My eternal problem with the capture remains. Some bokehs are great, the regular bokeh is cutting me perfectly from the background, but the darker ones are, well, cutting my ears. You can see here, it's clipping a bit of the ear, just slightly, especially this one here. And I'm not even wearing headphones, so you can see there's a slight muddiness of the edge of the ear. It's not the first time I've been seeing this ever since the iPhone X. Okay, a poster of 30 Seconds to Mars coming to town, a pretty well rendered sky here, but once again the camera is pretty hungry for light, so much so that the whiter objects will appear whiter than they actually are. Like for example, we have these landscape shots here, and the white is a bit too intense. But the sky is pretty well represented. Okay, so we have this statue here. It's a good opportunity to try out the portrait mode. Several shots to test out the zoom. And once again, an excellent sky as perceived by the human eye. And now we go here, where on the screen here, the vegetation looks fine. However, if you look at the edges, you'll see that there is a bit of oversaturation on account of the sun. Even though we're in October, there are still days with almost 30 degrees Celsius, and especially on the ultra wide, you're losing details, you're getting extra exposure, and things aren't as impressive as I expected when I heard we were about to get a new ultra wide camera. So yeah, ultra wide underwhelming so far, but the zoom totally delivers. And we even got up close with a fly. With an excellent texture and detail, actually reminded me of the prowess of the Huawei Pura 70 series or even the recent Pixel 8s. Excellent texture of leaves here, autumn leaves. I'll say it right now, this phone handles close-up shots better than distance shots, because in the distance you may notice the details are lacking, like the leaves here. And it's not just a matter of the phone screen, it's also a matter of seeing them on a desktop or TV. This is actually a good shot with the sun in front of us, with the sky in a decent color. So all colors are okay, except for when you catch some vegetation in the distance, in the center of a ultra-wide shot. I know there's a lot of conditions, but yeah, I may want too much from this. Another set of selfies, once again excellent in texture, in details of the beard, of the hair, and a pretty nicely cut bokeh, except for maybe the headphone here, which appeals a tad weird. Going further, once again, clipping the ears on the sides, as it happens every year for me with the iPhones. Now in the shade, you will start to notice a bit of noise because there's a lot of tree shading around here, but the colors and texture of the toys are excellent, so nothing to be underwhelmed about here. There's one photo which I remembered here. It's actually this one. I always use this area of the park as a landmark. It has multiple species of trees with different shades of green, and they're captured pretty fine here, except that some of these trees, which I know exactly their color, are overexposed, particularly this one here. It's too exposed compared to what I've seen on a Samsung or on a Pixel. That's my obsession with the exposure. Now, the best colors are shown when you're close to the objects, and the best texture. Look at this photo. This is a perfect photo. I cannot imagine anything better about it if you're taking it with a DSLR. The texture, the roundness, the colors are all there, and I'm very happy with the results. So when you're close, things are great, including these roses here, dried up and ready to die in October, November. Excellent close-ups. I wouldn't say excellent macros because I try to get very close, and these are the results I achieved. This is a tree with moss on it, and these are supposed to be macros. It took me a few attempts to get the proper texture, and even so, I'm not very happy with what I achieved. I saw better on at least 5 Android phones. and even more shots in the park. So all in all, I'll have to say that the ultra-wide camera underwhelms me with its green and exposure and things like that, but in general the colors are fine, particularly fine if you're doing close-ups. Those have been daytime photos. Now let's swap to food photos. This is an acai bowl, first time having it. Excellent texture here. This is peanut butter. This is the actual acai. These are some blueberries. These are strawberries, and this is of course coconut. And then we have a focaccia here. I didn't get as close to this as I wanted to, and as close as I did with other phones. Samsung seems to be doing a bit better. Once again, this has been daytime capture. This is indoor capture. I would say it's quite fine, nothing to object. And now we switch to low light capture. It's nighttime. This is the entrance of a stand-up comedy club, captured in a pretty large amount of detail. Nice handling of the lights. Once again, nice handling of the lights, but the objects that are in motion aren't frozen in time as Huawei's or Pixel's or Samsung's would, so moving cars may be a problem. And as usual for Apple, some of the lights may pose problems. You can see here some extra reflections and even elongated street lights when you're switching to ultra-wide. As usual, the ultra-wide is vulnerable in the low light, no matter how much you're paying for the phone. This is actually a photo that looks like a mid-range phone, not a high-end phone. Look at the trees. Look at the lights. However, the night mode is quite efficient, even though I would say it doesn't exaggerate as much as other phones do, making night into day. So it keeps the ideal amount of light. Now, I also took some nighttime selfies, as I was actually shocked by how not impressive they are compared to the daytime ones. You can see the lack of clarity here, which is pretty strange. I expected nighttime selfies to be just as good. Here we are with some more shots of the church. This is a regular shot, and this is the night mode shot. I know it's pretty impressive, but honestly, I think the Samsung can do the same or better. A bunch of billboards here, and this time we're in the park. Another comparison of the regular shot and the nighttime shot. A regular shot is too dark, nothing happening, and this is the nighttime. If you're patient and wait for 5 seconds, that's what you get. And this is when the fountains light up. I mean, these aren't bad results, but keeping in mind what Samsung can do with the S24 Ultra, you'll definitely see it better. We're here at a cinema, and we have several more. These are some artworks. There was an art fair in Bucharest. This kept glimmering, so indoors, once again, nothing to write bad about it. My biggest struggle with this phone was indoors, in a cocktail bar, in a close-up. I struggled very hard to capture this Mandarin foam cocktail. This is the photo I settled on, but I find it hard to take a proper Instagram shot inside a poorly lit bar compared to the Galaxy S24 series or the Pixel 8. And I attended a concert, a doom metal concert, where the phone finally delivered. I actually have very little to complain about when it strictly comes to concerts being photographed by an iPhone. Even though I've seen better zoom, to be honest. Usually I relied on a Huawei to take my zoomed shots at concerts. This is pretty solid, but 5x zoom, to be honest, Samsung or Huawei probably does it better. There are still some good enough to publish in reviews, musical reviews for this concert. It doesn't capture as much light as I would have expected it to, but it captures the mood in an excellent fashion. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Underwhelmed by the ultra-wide camera, impressed by the close-ups, excellent food texture. The zoom is, I would say, quite fine. Takes some good mood shots, good selfies, but it's cutting my ear in the bokeh, and that's pretty much it. Now let's talk about the videos. So for videos, let me just go to the video section. Okay, so by the way, we have a new photo app, as you can see here. So let's start off with the selfies. This is the selfie video.
Asta este iPhone 16 Pro Max, noul meu daily driver. Filmăm 4K 30 cu camera frontală. În parcul Alexandru Ioan Cuza.
Good enough for vlogging, pretty good stabilization, lots of details and texture. The background is a bit too exposed for my liking, but the message comes across. My favorite video here, and I'm not being a narcissist, is probably this one, the bokeh video. The cinematic capture, it's, I would say, DSLR level. I find it hard that you can record a better video than this one with a professional camera when it comes strictly to vlogging. You can see the vein on my forehead, you can see the texture of my beard, so everything checks out. I did multiple stabilization tests, so let's actually see some of them. No, not this one, but as I said before, I have multiple tests here, so bear with me. This was actually a tracking shot. This is one of them. So I descended stairs in a hurry in 4K 30, 4K 60, 4K 120, and things were impressive every time. Zero problems with the stabilization. Keep in mind we're descending stairs right now and you can't even tell. I also did a bunch of focus tests. This one was fine. Focusing on the rose, on the background, on the rose, on the background. You can definitely notice some burn here, some overexposure and oversaturation of the background. We also had a more relevant shot when it came to another part of the park. This is when I was underwhelmed. Now, the white part of this tram is too white on account of that overexposure and obsession with capturing so much light. Everything that's white here is exaggeratedly white compared to my own perception. The clarity is crystal, no doubt about it. The zoom is fluid, the picture is perfect, but once again, the exposure value and the saturation may be problems. Vegetation, plenty of it in the sun, and you can see here that there's things happening. There's too much exposure and too much saturation for the leaves in the trees. Probably more than the photos, even though I complained about that there as well. And finally, this panoramic view. The sky has a pretty nice color, realistic and all that, but the vegetation doesn't. So yeah. Okay, so these have been daytime shots. During the low light, there's this one. There's a problem with this billboard here. You can see it's overblown, and so are some of the street lights. Ironically, an ad for Xiaomi 14T series. The image is pretty fluid with moving objects, there's no problem about that. But some of the logos here for the hotel and some casinos and some street lights and some car lights are exaggerated. And you can see here some of the trademark reflections, the famous fireflies that Apple generates. Okay, so we also have this one, a zoom test when it comes to the park here. Pretty impressive, so not much bad thing to say about it. And we also have this demo. As clear as most mid-rangers nowadays, most high-end phones nowadays, with those extra reflections that Apple adds, but too much noise in the darker areas, and some overly lit parts. Believe it or not, the best part of this phone is when it comes to concerts. This is a techno concert, pretty crazy techno concert. It can handle the movement, it can handle the light, it can handle the bass. One of the best microphones ever. And if you're switching genres, now I actually filmed this concert here and I was actually impressed by it. Not only by the lighting and the detail and the clarity, but by the sound. I listened to this on my headphones and had some spatial awareness. I heard people talking behind me, so much so I thought there were people actually behind me on the street when listening to the song afterwards. There weren't. There were the people behind me at the concert who were talking and I was able to hear them above the music. So yeah. This is a doom metal band from Romania called Clouds. I recommend if you're listening to doom metal. And I have several other things here. I even have a video of me playing golf. This one here, or attempting to. Missing and then hitting it finally. Okay, so I use this as my daily driver for hands-on, as well as unboxings and things like that when traveling. So I should be pretty happy with it, except for the whole overexposure part and the fact that at night there are some weird reflections. Okay, now we can talk about connectivity. So the phone has 5G connectivity, there's eSIM and nano SIM, there's Bluetooth 5.3, Wi-Fi 7, GPS dual band. The port is USB-C 3.2, not 2.0 as the previous iPhones. We have ultra-wideband and satellite connection in some countries. The calls were loud and clear, and I also did a speed test. The results can be seen here. Pretty impressive, by the way. Up to 574 megapixel download when it comes to 5G, 42.8 megapixel upload, and on Wi-Fi 772 over 829 megapixel. All of them check out and are quite fine. Now when it comes to iOS 18, Apple Intelligence is coming at the end of the month in USA. We in Europe have a long wait ahead of us, 2025 maybe. There's ChatGPT integration when it comes, there's Type to Siri, there's transcribing in real time, there's summaries for long texts, there's suggestions to change the tone of your text, and so much more. There's recognition of objects with the camera, once again more. But iOS 18 is here. Let's analyze what it has to offer. So first of all, you can mess around with the icons. So keep the screen pressed and you can do editing and you can do customization like this. So the icons can be made smaller or larger. You can make them dark, automatic, or tinted. You can change the color of the tint. I'm going to keep it like this for now. Now, aside from that, let's see what we have here. So this is the notification area and this is the control center. I used to press here for Bluetooth. Now is the whole connectivity section, and it actually has 3 pages. This is the main page, this is the music page, and this is the connectivity page. Of course, things are customizable here. You can tweak it as you please. And we also have this flashlight, which you can change the intensity of it by using the swipe. That's one of the novelties. Let's actually extinguish it. We still have the dynamic island here, which changes according to your needs. So for example, if I'm using the clock and I'm setting a timer, I do this, you can see the timer at the top lighting up. When you're using Google Maps, you can see here the indication, go left, go right, and several other apps. You can see a waveform when you're using YouTube, Spotify, and things like that. What else? There's a passwords application where you keep all your codes now. The calculator will have its own notes. So calculator here, these are the modes, scientific and math notes. You can solve math, use variables, have maths in your notes app, and so much more. And aside from that, the voice memos have something interesting. So this is an HMD conference I participated into. You can view its transcript from the get-go. We don't need Apple Intelligence for that. We already have it here and it's pretty competent. I would say it's almost better than the one that Xiaomi offers with the Xiaomi AI on the Xiaomi 14T Pro. Now, let's see what else. So, from what I understood, there is a higher degree of customization for the lock screen. So if you keep it pressed like that, you can customize it, lock screen and home screen. You can swap between styles if you want to, and you can alternate these widgets here with more varieties of size and things like that. You can, speaking of which, you can also use more varieties of widgets on the home screens, and you can also leave spaces between icons, which is a feature long overdue. Of course, you can also have, once again, overlapping stacked widgets of multiple sizes. The Notes application lets you collapse and restrain the opposite of collapse, bigger text if you want to. You can also add audio to Notes. And as I said before, the Photos application now is, I would say, more immersive, even though people may feel it's a bit more chaotic like this. So yeah, this is the core of the Photos application, and at the bottom you see some selections and new organizations in today, people, pets, and more. But it's a bit chaotic, all that organization. Now, aside from that, we have RCS messaging, which lets you see the typing people when they're typing to you. You can send high resolution pictures. We also have a game mode. So let's say I start a game like Asphalt here. You will trigger the game mode automatically. You don't have to do anything. It's just trigger straight away. Okay, and let's see other features. In Safari, we now have an option to hide distracting items and the option to highlight useful info automatically, like for example an address. Still, we have the task switcher here, which you already know from previous generations, and I would say that's pretty much it. We have 3 widget sizes, 2-on-2, 4-on-2, or 4-on-4, and if I forgot anything, I'll definitely handle it in the text review. So I think that's pretty much it as far as the software is concerned. Not much novelty, I have to say, except for the whole calculator passwords, the novelty in the journaling application for your mental health, and we're still waiting on the Apple Intelligence. Now I think it's time for the verdict. So on the Pro side, we have a solid build and premium materials. We have an excellently bright screen available here, no overheating compared to last year, pretty good performance, no throttling, fast connectivity, loudspeakers, solid battery life, great camera up close, perfect stabilization, perfect selfie video capture, especially with bokeh, great zoom, spatial microphones, customizable iOS 18. And the conversion from voice to text is quite solid in the voice recording application. The cons, it's a bit too big and too heavy. There's no charger bundled. The charge is low. There's no AI yet. We have the same overall cameras at its core. The ultra-wide is a bit of a letdown compared to the predecessor. I say that the night mode still has some imperfections, and especially the night videos, lots of reflections, which I don't like to see here. The speakers don't have as much bass as you would expect. And there's the problem with overexposure and oversaturation of the vegetation every once in a while. And the camera button still hasn't convinced me, but remains to be seen. Especially in portrait, it feels kind of weird. Now, in selfies, it's better than the Google Pixel. In CPU, it's better than the Google Pixel. In pictures and videos in general, it's inferior to the Google Pixel. And also the Galaxy S24 Ultra. In battery, it's superior to the Google Pixel. It fights on equal terms with the Galaxy S24 series. So there are pros and cons, no matter how you want it. The biggest letdown is the ultra wide. The most impressive part is the cinematic selfie capture. That's pretty much it. For my job, as a hands-on tool for traveling and unboxing and hands-on, it's excellent. But the predecessors, the 2-3 predecessors, were also excellent. As time will pass, I'll get convinced if it's superior to the S24 Ultra and the Pixel. Right now, not very sure, except for those few aspects. And the best part of it still is the fact that you can take ProRes videos 4K 120, and it's 4K 120 for real, not like the OnePlus or Sony ones. That's it from gsno.com, a pretty lengthy review of the iPhone 16 Pro Max. Definitely a vlogging tool with some imperfections.